I'm Judy Dumont, Director of the Massachusetts Broadband Institute.
Hi, and I'm Tim Scott, Vice President of Axia NG Networks USA.
And today we have with us a very special guest, Peter DeRico, who is Chair of Leverett's Broadband Committee and on the Select Board. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
We'll be talking with Peter later today about what Leverett has been up to in the world of broadband. Some of you may know they've been doing some pretty interesting stuff, so we'll dive into that a bit later. But first, as we like to start every show, just a little bit about who we are and what it is that we're doing. So the MassBroadband Institute was created by Governor Patrick back in 2008 to close the digital divide in Massachusetts. And that primarily means focused on building broadband infrastructure where it didn't exist out here in Western Mass. So we are in the process of building out MassBroadband123, which is a 1,200-mile, middle-mile broadband network and connecting 1,200 community anchor institutions. And Tim has a very special role. Do you want to just tell us about that?
Yeah, thanks, Judy. Axia was selected by the Commonwealth to be the network operator once the infrastructure is fully completed and built out. It'll connect many what are called community anchor institutions across the network. And our role is rather unique. We're what's referred to as a wholesale-only operator. So the customers on the network will actually be retail service providers that will compete to offer services to the various connected anchor institutions across the network. So we're going to talk in a little bit about some of the updates that we have there. But Judy, I believe that you had a pretty exciting week recently that involved the governor out in Western Massachusetts.
We did. I think we all had an exciting week. So on April 4th, Governor Patrick and Congressman Neal and former Congressman John Olver joined the MBI, Axia, and some of the state representatives, Senator Ben Downing and Representative Smitty Pignatelli, out in Otis. We were at the Farmington River School, and we had a launch celebration. And what we were celebrating is we had connected the first segment of the network to be up and running. And that segment went from Springfield, which is the internet regional gateway here in Western Mass, out to Sandusfield, which is a point of interconnection where we have our electronics, and then up north to Otis. Right. And so that was pretty exciting.
I thought it was great, and it was exciting, and I think the experiment that was set up was also pretty unique. So maybe you could give us a little background on that. Sure.
Well, we're trying to figure out how to make it visible to show the launch. What we decided to do was the theme was connecting Western Mass with the world, and so we worked with our partners of Microsoft and Skype. And Crocker Communications, who came in and provided the internet access, and we Skyped with the school kids, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade at the Farmington River School, out to counterparts in Bogota, Colombia, and then collectively they participated in an exercise with the Goddard Space Center in Maryland, part of NASA, and we actually got to look into their clean room and understand all that they're doing about building the new telescope that will replace the Hubble telescope. So right. Pretty cool stuff.
It was very cool stuff, and Axia's role as part of that was to ensure what we would call the transport services was available to Crocker, who assisted the school setting up the internet connection, ensuring that we had a really fast pipe, in this case, for the Skype video services to work. And it was great to see the kids interact over the video link with the governor's help. So
sure. And just as an example, in talking to the IT person at the school, currently they share. The school has one link, and it's about a 2 megabit downstream link. We tested it and we were getting 400 megabits downstream. And so the difference is that right now they have to schedule who shows a video, what teacher shows a video, and Now what's going to be open is that much more. Every classroom could have a video going at the same time and still have plenty of bandwidth.
Great. Well, certainly it was a great event, so congratulations for pulling it together. And this was what we really referred to as the first segment of the network, which included the school in Otis. What's next as it relates to the following segments and the build process of the network?
Sure. So there are 35 segments, and this was one of 35 to be lit. And so you'll see, and we'll be lighting these segments each and every month between now and July. And the next set of segments to come up are building off of the Springfield to Sandusfield network. We'll be finishing the route out to Great Barrington in a little bit, and then north from Greenfield out to Charlemont is the next segment to be built, and that will then all go down along I-91, which has been built for a while now, and connect into one Federal. So if anybody has questions about when their town, what order or when their town is going to go live, they can check out the MassBroadband.org website. Actually, you probably have it at Axia MassBroadband123 as well, to check for the latest updates. And we'll be coming to towns near you to talk more about it. Before this gets out, we're actually heading to Savoy and Buckland over the next couple of days, and then later in April and in May we'll be in other areas. So
the network's being built in these segments. Segment 1 is well underway and operational.
Open for business, as I like to say.
I know you like statistics, and you've got a lot of cool ones to quote around the build, which is it's actually an important metric of how we're actually performing. So what's the latest as it relates to the project stats?
Yeah, we're getting really close. It's really exciting. So we're at 97% of make ready done, and just to remind you what that is working with the utility companies, the electric companies, and Verizon to make room on the 33,000 utility poles that we're putting our fiber on. So we've just got a handful of poles that we'll probably have throughout until we're finished with the build in July. And then our process of putting fiber up, first we put a metal strand up, and we can put that up at 1 mile increments, and we've got 86% of the network, the strand up on that network, and 78% of the fiber. So we are really coming down to the short strokes. And the interesting thing is there's only 9% of the network that is underground, but and they're little small chunks throughout the entire network, and we've just the asphalt plants have just opened back up a little bit later than they were originally planning, and so now the crews are going out and finishing those little stretches of underground, and that's when all the construction will be complete. Tim, how about you? What have you been up to while I'm working on construction?
Well, certainly Axia's primary role has been really to continue our role of what we call operational readiness. So that's really getting ready as an organization to ensure that when all the segments are fully built, completed, and effectively handed over for Axia operations, that we're ready as an organization to support the network, support the service providers that will use it. A good example of that and the interest that's continuing to gain would be we have now over 30 service providers that have signed what are called letters of intent to use the network. But out of that 30, we have actually 12 of them that have signed proper contracts, are referred to as connecting agreements, by which they're now getting ready to use the network and interconnect with the network so that they can provide services to some of the 1,200 anchor institutions that will be connected. So we're very excited about that. Another key piece of activity that happened during the month of March is we actually connected what we'd really consider the first CAI, the first community anchor institution. It's the new state data center in Springfield, and its primary purpose is a disaster recovery site for what's called ITD, the Commonwealth's IT department. And that service has been activated. We're actually providing a 10 gig wavelength, so a huge amount of capacity to this new facility that is ITD's facility in Springfield. So we're very excited about that. It's operational. They're happy. We're happy. The network's working and providing those services. So you know, that's been our main activity over the last piece. And I think what's very important for today's discussion is that we have maybe 6 months left of construction as we build out the rest of the network. We build out the remaining segments. And just to remind everybody that the purpose of this network is what we refer to as a middle mile network. So its primary purpose is to connect the 120 odd towns that will sit on the new 1,200 mile fiber infrastructure. And it'll serve, as we've talked about, these 1,200 community anchor institutions that will be connected. And that's why it's referred to as a middle mile infrastructure, because it's essentially, consider it like the interstate system, the road system that's being built across Western Mass. What we hope, and indeed I think what many people expect, is that this new middle mile infrastructure will enable communities to build what is called last mile, or build those connections that will go outside of the anchor institutions in their town. So not just the schools, but actually look to connect their businesses, and hopefully in some cases look to connect the residential homes also to this middle mile infrastructure, because now the transport actually exists for these different connections back to the Boston internet market. So we're very excited about that. There's been a lot of communities already in Western Mass that have been at the forefront of trying to figure that last mile piece out, and I think you have a couple of examples, perhaps, Judy, of those that you want to share, and then we're excited to hear more from Peter.
Sure. Well, there's also been a lot of activity. I just wanted, you said 6 months left of construction. Actually, where it'll be end of July is when construction is. So I think that's more like 3 months. But there'll be additional work followed on after that. Right. But we also, we did have some exciting news, lots of excitement going on around last mile. And in March, the governor filed, as part of an IT bill, an additional $40 million to come to the MassBroadband Institute specifically for last mile projects. And we're really viewing this as solving it from a regional perspective. What we did in 2011 really helped set the stage and create a proof point for that. And that's when we gave out 8 grants to communities to both plan and to deploy broadband. And so, for instance, towns like Princeton and Warwick and Terringham, actually we gave them grants for them to build out their wireless infrastructure. And then we also gave grants to Wired West and the town of Leverett from a planning perspective, and to really take a look at what could a town or a group of towns do in terms of affecting last mile. What this bond bill enables us to do is really take a step back and work with the towns, with Wired West, collectively, and develop a regional solution. And so we're in the early stages of that, as the bill has just been filed. It hasn't been passed, and you know, we want to make sure that that we work collectively, and also we need to the $40 million, just like the $40 million that was set aside early on, is not meant to cover everything. Sure. And so there's additional funding that needs to be put together, be it federal grants, be it private sector, and or municipalities. And so certainly I think there's a lot that can be learned from what Leverett has done. And so now I think we'd like to bring Peter into the discussion. So Peter, do you want to just talk a little bit about where you are
Sure.
today and what you're doing. Just
Yep.
give
Sure.
everybody
I
a
think you
step
should tell us
back.
a little bit about Leverett first.
Well, I'll
that's
tell
pretty
you.
unique
Yeah.
too, right?
Exactly. So Leverett is one of the towns that's in the MassBroadband123 area. It's a small town, as most of these towns are actually. About 2,000 people, about 800 households, about 31 or 6 thereabouts miles of roads. 1,000 poles. You talked about make ready. When you start working on these things, you pay attention to things that these little details that turn out to be crucial.
Asphalt plants are my recent thing to pay attention to.
So Leverett is also in an interesting position demographically. It's right next to Amherst with the 5-college population, the university and the colleges. And on the other side, it's next to, well, it's got farms in it, but it's next to a kind of a more traditional rural community. And so we have a mix of perspectives on communications and the internet, and we were already thinking about this as a town at the same time that MBI was gearing up, and the discussions with Axia were actually just happening. So I think we've kind of understood things early enough on to realize this was a tremendous opportunity, and the MBI grant that you awarded us, which was out of a competitive bidding process or application process, was crucial to what the town was able to do, because it gave us the financial wherewithal to go out for bids to get a design for a network, but it also gave us a connectivity with thinkers in the Commonwealth and beyond the Commonwealth who are looking at broadband, rural broadband issues. So we've been very much involved from the beginning and really very much appreciative of what the MBI 123 project has done and continues to do for us, not just that grant, but also kind of a moral support, encouragement, technical support has been very crucial to us and continues to be crucial.
Peter, quick question. What's the broadband problem that Leverett's trying to fix?
Basically, the unconnectedness that you were referring to as a general problem. There's a small section, maybe 2 miles of road that has DSL service from the local phone company, but other than that, people rely on satellites for the most part, and also some fixed wireless solutions. People that live in some parts of town can get wireless cell phone coverage, and they use that avenue. And then, remarkably, there are still some people on dial-up, which is, it seems like it's you know, another era. But for some people, that is what they consider their connectivity to the internet, and that's sort of the makeup of what exists at the moment.
So certainly a broadband challenge in terms of what you have today.
Absolutely.
And where is Leverett in their process of trying to come up with a fix for the problem for the town?
At the most recent news, I'll start off with that, where we are. We had gone out for bids for the network build, and we had actually had come to award a bid to a contractor, but 2 of the bids that were rejected went to the Attorney General's office about the bid form, not the content of the request for bids, but the bid form. And the Attorney General said there was a technical glitch in the bid form, so we want to restart that process. But for us, there was it's a sort of a bump in the road. Turns out to actually be, there's a little silver lining, which is referring to the governor's recent initiative for a regional solution. This has given us some space to step back and look at what we're going to do as a town in relation to what's happening to the region as a whole. So that even though most of the time we talk about Leverett, what we need to do for Leverett, those of us who are involved in the process are aware that there's a regional problem, and we have always thought of ourselves as being part of the solution for the regional problem. And so right now where we are is to assess what's the relationship between what we have done so far and what now seems possible regionally, both in terms of the network operation, network infrastructure, and network financing.
And just to clarify for everybody though, you know what the solution is, and we would call it fiber to the premise.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
Can you just elaborate on that? Because there's always procurement bumps in any process, but elaborate a little bit on that.
Yes.
What is the solution for Leverett?
You know, you get involved in these discussions with people, and you forget sometimes that others are not even clear about what broadband means. Even people who seem to be savvy people, this kind of goes over their heads. But so fiber to the home, clearly fiber optics. Active Ethernet means it's a type of fiber connection that'll go from the middle mile portals to each home, so that there's the high-speed symmetrical bandwidth that allows a gigabit network to serve the entire community.
Right.
And symmetrical meaning that the fiber will carry data outward as fast as it carries it inward, and that's quite different from what the conventional model is of a higher download speed than an upload speed. And for us, this became crucial. If I can say something about how we, what the town thought about as it indicated support. And by the way, the support for this build got a 90% approval vote at a annual town meeting a year ago with a standing room only crowd.
Does anything ever get 90%?
You know, unanimous once in a while on some rare issue, but not on a, and that was a secret ballot. It was not something where people felt pressured to vote one way or the other, followed by 83.5% approval at an even bigger turnout for the debt exclusion under Proposition 2.5 under Massachusetts law. So very strong support, and some of the crucial pieces of the reasons for the support were actually technically based. So I talk about high-speed symmetrical bandwidth. That's the kind of bandwidth that allows something like telemedicine to work, so that a person who is otherwise going to be confined in a medical facility for monitoring or going to have frequent doctor visits can be monitored at home by a visiting nurse, or sometimes even continuously monitored by means of the network transmitting data about their blood oxygen, the pulse rate, the rest of that. So telemedicine. Another aspect of symmetrical bandwidth is the work in the cloud. People talk about the cloud nowadays, but if you can't upload fast, you can't work in the cloud. So we have authors that have had to go elsewhere in order to upload books to the Library of Congress, for example. Or we have musicians and artists who can't do work from home. People who are just doing ordinary professional work from home, or would be able to, can't do that. So that kind of population in town, the elderly in particular, with the chronic medical needs for telemedicine, the professionals with the need for communication working in the cloud, these were issues as people began to understand technology, what bandwidth is, what symmetrical high speed is. They began to realize this can solve a problem that they have. This can help them and save them money, actually, because it's an economic thing. It's not just a cultural, although it is a cultural thing too.
Well, in that, I just was so amazed and happy at the way that you went about it in the town to make sure that you addressed the issues of everyone in the town in terms of that broadband as an infrastructure, as a technology is interesting, but what are the applications that affect each and every resident's daily life?
Yes, and also that it's municipal infrastructure. It's the political support, which we've had from the beginning through the select board and other entities in town, has been clear that we regard communications networks as infrastructure, just like the roads, just like the schools. This is part of what a town offers as a town. And that concept politically was important in terms of developing support to say that the taxpayers of Leverett would actually pay for this bill, that the town would own the network, just as the state owns the MBI network. And then we would contract for the operation of the network, for service providing, but it would be funded out of the tax base. The subscribers would be the ones who would pay to bring through the, or to support the operation and the service providing, but the taxpayers would pay for the build, so that it's enhancing everybody's property values equally immediately upon installing it. And whether or not you use the internet for a lot or a little, you have the connection which has enhanced your property values and which has been part of what the town considers is what you get for living in town, just like you get roads and schools and so on.
So Peter, my last question is, one thing I've learned in my experience is whether it's a small network, a medium network, or a huge network, the challenges are always very challenging. It doesn't really change with the size of the network. So obviously it's a small network, it's a great vision, and it's going to be fiber essentially to every premise in Leverett. You get to tell us about one biggest challenge that you face in your role.
Geez, you know, there's been so much of it that we think the challenges for the committee and we have a very technically qualified committee, people who do this kind of work all the time, whether it's capital projects or network building or database building. It's actually felt like it's an education. We've learned a lot. We've had to study what's going on across the country. And the challenges really have been of the sort that are enjoyable to surmount, because they've been ones where people, it's the occasional person who says, you know, I have fast enough speed now. Well, I've got high speed with DSL, and then they talk to you a little bit, and they start telling you their frustrations. You realize they don't really know what's available in the world. They've never been outside that framework, and so then the people who've been asking questions, which it seems first like this is a challenge, they're naysaying to what you're doing, turn out to actually be your friends in the planning process, because they're illuminating what you have yet to explain adequately to people. And when they've pointed out things, did you remember to ask about this? And you say, oh, well, you know, actually that's a good question. We didn't remember to ask, whatever that this was. Because initially there were a handful of people who think, oh, this is something that the government should not be doing. That you know, you leave this to the big corporations because they're the only ones who know what they're talking about. They gradually realize that the town knows what it's talking about, that they too can begin to know what they're talking about, and that government can have a positive function. So I would say it's really that way in which the technical piece meets the political piece. That's the challenge, but it can be dealt with, and it dealt with in a way that educates everybody.
So what's your goal to get the network built?
We're hoping by 2014, the end of 2014. And as Judy said, the make ready is, we're actually working on that ourselves. We're hoping to be able to keep moving even as we do this reassessment of the, you know, how do we fit with the regional planning.
And Peter, you've been you and the committee have been very gracious with your time in talking to other towns in the region, and in some cases outside of the state for us. And I think that you've agreed to allow your contacts to be put up on the bottom of the screen. So we appreciate everything that you and the committee and the town have done to really bring this issue forward and to actually show that towns can and should have involvement in this. And so we thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. And I want to just say it's a mutual embrace here, that the middle mile and the last mile projects, as we see them, are both ways of demonstrating what can be done when you have government-private cooperation with a practical goal in mind and without ideology, if I can say that.
No, I think it's a great model, and one thing I would say is it's one example of how community broadband can work, and I think it's a great model that hopefully other communities here across Western Mass will look to emulate. So congratulations, and I look forward to seeing it in operation at the end of 2014.
Likewise.
Good luck, Peter.
And I think once again the time goes by so fast when we do this. So we will look forward to talking to you in about a month and updating you on all the exciting progress as this middle mile network is coming to completion. Peter, thank you for coming in.
Welcome.
Tim, good to see you again.
Thanks, Judy. Nice to see you.
And we'll see you all in a month or so.